Dragon.
I'm only going to 3D print or print the...
No, it was called Print the Legend.
Every once in a while, a revolutionary product comes along that changes everything.
We're doing another Geek and Dragon episode here, and we wanted to talk about, this is sort of I guess a topic that's kind of near and dear to our hearts to some extent, in that as nerds, there's nothing more fabulous in the world than the idea of being able to print your own anything.
Everybody thought home computers were a really, really cool thing that only nerdy people were ever going to be into. 3D printers are on that same kind of arc.
We're out to fuel the next industrial revolution by putting the power to manufacture things in your hands.
We're just saying, we got to hand it to Netflix for creating this kind of content, because it's sort of an interesting topic for a film. I imagine it would be not an easy one to get made without someone like Netflix coming in to help them out. But I saw the film, I loved the film. I said, okay, I gotta get my friend Q's take on this, because he's just bought himself a 3D printer.
Yes, and it's funny. One of the it's a documentary about several 3D printing companies and several people in the industry. The printer I ordered was not featured because I think it's a bit of a newer company.
Well, they seem to be suddenly all these new printing companies are sort of popping up now. I think because of this, right?
Yeah, no, I mean it's a huge industry, but my printer is delayed a few weeks.
Is it because they haven't made it yet, or is it the same sort of situation?
I think they've made 3D printers, but the one I ordered was their newest model.
Right.
And because it's the most self-contained and the most...
And they can't keep up with the demand. Like, they just can't do it. This is just, it has absolutely blown up. And that's basically what this is doing. I got the sense that the filmmaker really wanted to be on the forefront. Like, he wanted to say, like, look, this film could be about the next, Steve Jobs, or the next, Bill Gates or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But can I just say that did you watch through the beginning of the credits when they do the little updates on each person? That was the most depressing thing ever.
In what way? Why?
Well, it's like, oh, this guy is still being sued, and Bree Pedicky is
at the end, you mean?
At the very end,
and nobody works for the company anymore.
Yeah.
Just
like, wow.
It was. I found myself chuckling because I'm such a jaded bastard. But I think no one goes into a business to fail. No one goes into a business to get sued. No one goes into a business to have an argument and get out. And I think that these guys, I'm going to throw my glasses on so I can see what we're doing. But, these guys were struggling with a startup. And unlike, I'm used to all these startup companies where there's nothing. There's no physical, it's all, not nothing. I mean, it's a computer, it's computer code, or it's a new website portal or whatever. It's all these, it's like web-based technologies. All of a sudden, this is a physical product. Like, they're hackers in a very physical sort of maker, sort of studios kind of way.
3D printing has the potential to revolutionize the way we make almost everything.
Some of the developments that come from the 3D printer might put the first person to create that device on the pedestal of major social innovator.
You finish.
I'll never finish. I can talk forever.
Well, I was going to say, I think one of the things about 3D printing is that it's one of the first new kinds of physical tech that people are wanting. Computers exist, and people can make new computers. They can make new software computers. Phones have existed for a while now. They can make new phones. They can make new software for phones. But the 3D printer is a new kind of hardware.
And I think it's also, as I said at the beginning, it's kind of like the geek's dream. The idea of like having something on a screen and having it appear in a printer in a 3D form is just something that we've, since the days of the transporter and stuff. I mean, I live for that kind of thing. The idea of like creating a physical form of a digital property is very,
Yeah.
and the film, just to get a little basis of a little sort of understanding summary for what the film is. So basically, it follows a few different companies in their sort of race to bring 3D printing. Not so much. It's not even about the invention of 3D printing because it's already been invented. Like there are these huge companies out there that do 3D printing and have been doing it for years, like 20 years or something, basically, right?
Yeah, and basically, I mean, I've talked to my dad about this. He used to work in a place with a 3D printer, but basically, the 3D printers are industrial scale, not necessarily in size, but in price.
Yeah, hundreds of thousands of dollars or $500,000, whatever. And it harkens back to the days of the old mainframe computers, where you have these massive, incredibly powerful potential technology that's only available to the very rich and the corporations, and whereas now the rush is to bring that technology to the desktop, and that's what this is about. And it's about, I think a lot of these people going in there, at least pitching the idea that this is for a greater good, that this is a technology that will be used for good and should be available to all. And it's just funny how those beliefs crumble under the weight of a startup and the need to keep investors happy and keep...
And like how MakerBot started all open source.
Yeah.
And then slowly became less and less open source.
Yeah, I'm always a little nervous when I see documentaries because I know that you can't help it. You take a side just by what you film. I feel that you're making a decision by not filming something else. You are showing a bias no matter what you do when it comes to documentaries. Some of them are better at pretending not to have a bias than others, but this one I was kind of interested in because I got sucked into these characters. I started not liking one person and then liking another person, and then by the end of the film, I was like, wow, God, I hate that guy. The guy I loved at the beginning, I was, and then, again, are there spoilers in documentaries? I don't know. But, to find out that they're no longer involved in the process it was fascinating.
I'm sure they're doing their own thing now, but yeah.
I'm sure they're doing fine. It was just, it's how business basically crushes, in a strange way, it crushes the entrepreneurial spirit. Like as a startup, I feel like companies are two different forms. It's a startup mentality, and then when you make that jump to the next stage, many of those people who are perfect for that early startup phase, they fall away because they're not suitable for a large corporation.
Yeah. What was the other company? It was MakerBot.
It was MakerBot, and I brought them up here because I knew that was going to come up. Formlabs.
Formlabs.
That was an interesting one too. Very, very, how small a portion of the market they had, and then to get sued.
Yeah, but I liked that the documentary focused on these two companies. Obviously, MakerBot is sort of the first consumer company.
Yeah.
But I like that they also focused on Formlabs because it's a slightly different tech in terms of how the printing actually happens.
Well, yeah, the whole idea of the what is it?
It's stereolithography.
Yeah, where you're basically doing a layer of goo that is then basically cured by ultraviolet light. Yeah, and as opposed to these ones that basically squirt out the material and build it that way.
It's molten plastic that then hardens, whereas the Formlabs people, it's a resin, or it's a plastic, but it remains liquid at room temperature, and then you need the laser to harden it.
And the quality is generally better with that approach, is it not?
Yeah, well, that's what they said.
Again, it's so hard. The thing I took away from this was, everyone's love of Steve Jobs, but basically Steve Jobs was the marketing. He was the brand behind the brand, and how, MakerBot specifically were trying to create this persona for this guy so that he could be perceived the same way, and then thus investors would rush in towards an Apple-like company.
Every day I get inspired by people who have MakerBots and are doing amazing things.
There's one line in the documentary. It was like one of the former employees. And he's like, I think the Steve Jobs autobiography was a bad thing because it gave a lot of tech execs the excuse to be an asshole.
Yeah, but I think that's it. I think you could look for that. I mean, you know, not to. I can only equate it to what I know. In the film industry, I know a lot of really great actors who believe that in order to be a great actor, you have to be an asshole. Like, you have to be aloof. You have to be, you know, you can't talk to people in the way that other people would talk to people. You have to somehow distance yourself from people. And it's so funny to see it in the high tech industry as well, where you've got these people who are, you know, basically trying to prove themselves to be a worthy company head type thing. And how difficult the engineers, what a hard time the more engineering side of stuff has with it. Like Formlabs is run by basically an engineer, right? I don't know what else to call them, really.
Formlabs basically started in the basement of the house that Dave and I were living in.
I thought, this is a quintessential geek we are bringing up, obsessed with what he's doing.
If you're a leader, every day there is something new that comes up and smacks you in the face.
He was on the core team. I think he was one of the only people on the core team who were...
Maxim Lebovsky.
Yes, he has a very Russian name.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he's like the guy, he was like the founder engineer, and he's still with them. He still is the Formlabs CEO or whatever, head person. And, you know, it was funny, again, in the end credits. Honestly, the end credits was some of the most dramatic parts for me.
Yeah, I was surprised that they waited so long to deliver that.
Well, I think it's because they sort of finished the documentary and then, like, checked for updates, and they're like, oh.
Oh my god, it's all changed again in a week.
Because basically, the update for Max was he is now taking, like, media communication courses and has his second button-down shirt.
Yeah, it was cute. Again, that there's this guy trying so hard to pitch it. The technology's sound, although the patents aren't. I mean, that was the other thing that came up a lot in this, was the idea of who owns this technology. There are companies who've been doing this for, as we said, like 20 years, and it's their technology, and all of a sudden their technology is being made available for, you know.
It's funny, though, because if I remember correctly, the patents they were claiming weren't on the printer. That when they were getting served, the claim was infringement on patents related to the software.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
And they're like, oh, how is this? This is obviously bullshit because no one's seen our software. So how do they know that we're infringing their patent?
And I think this is the thing. The thing I got out of it was kind of depressing in a way. Is the idea that, you know, innovation isn't the name of the game. Like, it's not about making the best or having the brightest people involved. It's about the machine, this machine of business that's gonna make stuff. And I think there's this wonderful sort of naivete about how, you know, we're just gonna go out there, we're gonna build it ourselves. It's like, well, yeah, until there's money involved. As soon as there's money involved, it changes for people.
I think that's one of the reasons why businesses around software are so popular. Because, not only because it's easier than developing hardware and there's less room for being unique in hardware, but I feel like software is at least, there is less patents and legal concerns than with hardware.
You can patent software, right?
You can patent certain features and stuff. And obviously, your specific code is copyrighted or somehow protected. But, you know, someone can make a new piece of software that does an identical function if they make it themselves, right?
Well, and you're seeing a lot of these patents with the patent troll stuff going through, like someone who's patented podcasting was after all of the major podcasters because they would say, you're infringing my patent on podcasting, and I want a chunk of your, you know, of your income. I mean, it is, it's, while I mean, you don't often hear about this side of stuff, especially watching these little companies, like these very, like, just the look on their faces as, they got a lawsuit. They were sued by one of the largest companies in their, the largest company in their industry.
Yeah.
They're basically, that could be it. The other thing I got from which was really interesting was the Kickstarter side of it, where Formlabs got this huge influx of cash from, I mean, huge by my standards. It was like $4 million, something $3 or $4 million.
3 point something.
Yeah, it was like the largest Kickstarter
in tech,
like ever. And I'm sure someone's beat it now, but just the fact that, and they got it, and all of a sudden they're like, oh man, now we have to deliver all of these. Like, they hadn't planned on becoming a massive manufacturer of laser printers, of the 3D printers. YouTube. That was the other thing that was really interesting, was the fact that YouTube was a huge part of all of their strategies, especially Maker. MakerBot were really, really smart about creating enticing YouTube content and just putting it out there all the time. And something we haven't touched on, by the way. What about the 3D printed guns? What did you make of that, guy?
Well, I thought it was funny that in this documentary, primarily about business and these people who really, and especially in the middle of the documentary, are really successful. Like, they are shooting up so high and they're great that by the end, again in the credits, the only one with a uniformly positive future is the gun guy.
Yeah.
Because like, the update was, oh, he's got a $250,000 book deal and he's working on a Bitcoin project.
Yeah.
Like, nothing bad happens to him.
Welcome to the age of the printed magazine.
I'm going to introduce you to one of the most dangerous men on Earth.
We're information anarchists. There should be one law. If the police can have it, if the military can have it, then you can have it.
Somebody gets murdered with a MakerBot handgun, then what happens?
This is the guy who leapt to fame by printing originally cartridges for
Yeah, he did extended magazines.
Yeah.
And then the receiver, which is where the ammo goes, like the main mechanism of a gun.
For automatic weapons.
Yeah. And then he printed a one-shot pistol, basically.
Yeah, which again, I find it so amusing to me that there is such a huge outcry against this, because the reality is, you or I or anyone could build a pistol like that.
And to be honest, we wouldn't need a 3D printer.
No, wouldn't at all. No, it's not at all.
And people, I mean, I guess
they're called zip guns. They were called zip guns back in my day. It was like a one-shot homemade gun, and it was just something to put the bullet in that you could use to fire the cartridge.
Yeah, if people have a slight, metalworking or even woodworking skills, they can make some of these parts for like a functioning gun.
I imagine if you went online, I haven't done it, and you looked up zip gun or whatever they were called, you would find a million plans for it. But the guy's point was just, I'm not sure the guy was being as honest as he seems to be. I mean, he seemed like a showman to me. He was grandstanding basically. He's now gone on to build. I don't know. I did a little bit of research on him before we talked. He's gone on and is creating his own. It's called I think it's called the Ghost Gun printer or something like that, where basically it's a small 3D printer designed specifically for milling, for 3D printing parts for guns and creating your own guns. Because what's happening is people are selling him printers and then taking them away because they don't want them being used for printing guns.
Yeah.
Which is the logical extension. I don't know how much money's involved there for him, whether it's a money thing for him, whether it's an attention thing. Maybe it is. Maybe he's legit.
I think he is legit. I think he has a point in that someone was going to do this. Like, if it wasn't him, someone would have scanned a gun piece or made a gun piece in a program and then put it up there.
Well, and they're going to get more complicated.
Yeah.
And why a gun? Why does it have to be a gun? There's a million other dangerous things you could make.
Yeah, I mean, but I think the problem with him is he's kind of an asshole.
He's got that kind of like Texas wrap himself in the American flag for all the wrong reasons.
Not even that. He's not patriotic. He's an anarchist, right?
Well, but that's the weird thing about it is that, I mean, the people many people who love the idea of who worship the freedoms supposedly inherent in the U.S. way of life are kind of anarchists because they don't want government intervention. They don't want the government looking after them or telling them what they can and can't do.
And I think, yeah, the gun guy is even more extreme on that sort of scale.
Yeah, I can't tell if he's truly that extreme. Like, that was my thing, is I couldn't tell if this was a true earnest. I guess I couldn't get beyond the personality, but I couldn't tell whether it was an earnest need to make a point and to create change, or whether it was just an opportunist trying to get a book deal, basically.
Yeah.
But who knows? Again, we don't know because it depends. He was depicted a certain way in the film. He may not be like that at all.
Again, I think it's a bit of both. I think just he was the first one that happened to do this type of application with the printer, and then he got a lot of attention.
Say, this is our response to the gun thing. It was just, hey, look at this.
RoboHand was worth talking about. Did it get half the pickup of the DefCat stuff? Controversy sells.
And I think he does have a fairly extreme ideology that is more extreme than most people who would be interested in the 3D printed guns.
Yeah.
And that because he is that extreme, that helped give more attention to him, and he does sort of have that sort of brazen personality.
Yeah, I mean, he's got lots of footage of him sort of going, woohoo, and shooting automatic weapons and stuff like that. I just don't Look, I shouldn't say I don't understand that. It's really fun to shoot guns. It's incredibly fun. I'm all for, ranges and that sort of thing, like shooting in a controlled environment. But it's the gun-toting morons that I worry about.
Yeah.
But I guess, look, he's raised a really good point. He's made people talk about it. And my hunch is his position will soften over the years, and he'll sort of knuckle down to what it is that he wants to do, whether that's printing gun parts and making a lot of money doing that, or whether he's going to turn that into, whether he's going to find something else to complain about.
The fact that you said he's designing his own printer is like, okay. That makes
sense. He wants to sell it for $1,500, and it's I can't remember, it's called the Ghost something or another. There you go. It's called the Ghost Gunner. So he's definitely, he's found his niche, and he's gonna work it. So
I guess.
But so from a Geek's Guide to Netflix type side of stuff, I would say it's really worth seeing it, especially if you want to get a sense of the playing ground for the playground for this new technology, like who the players are, and it's kind of fun to see how these people will progress over the years. I mean, as the films pointed out, many of them have already sort of dropped out to some extent or been sort of cast off. But definitely worth. I think it's definitely worth seeing. But as you say, I don't think it's for everybody.
If you're nerdy like us, or you're interested in 3D printing, or you have a 3D printer and you don't necessarily know the background of the industry, then yes, definitely recommended. Also, I realized that I'm definitely business oriented because even after all this personal struggle and like hardship that these people go to, at the end of the documentary, is like, I want to start a company of some kind.
You're like a glutton for punishment. Yeah, I agree. I like to think that I could maybe make some of that work. Although
not tech, but I'm gonna definitely do the Cham business next spring or summer.
Yeah, look, I think trying to get into 3D printing is a very different thing.
Oh yeah.
I would say the biggest thing I was missing in that documentary was a really good background on 3D printing. I wanted to know. I wanted them to explain the technologies. Yeah, like even just give me a an idiot's guide to 3D printing. It was touched on, but I didn't feel like it. They talked about the industry. They didn't talk about the technology. Or maybe I just don't remember it. But
well, I mean, they touched on it, but basically, for the layer by layer, it's hot plastic or some sort of other material, and then for the lithography, it's a resin that solidifies under laser light.
Mm-hmm. What was interesting though is and that technology too. Apparently, it has to build its own supports. Like as it prints, it builds its own little supports to hold the pieces in to stop gravity from obviously taking effect as it's printing. It builds the necessary supports automatically, which then have to be taken off. So it's an added stage. I had this image of landfills.
It depends what the shape is. Like if the shape does have sort of like extending bits, then it has to build that support. But if there's certain shapes, like the example they showed of like a chest rook.
Yeah, you're fine with that.
Because it's just a tower, right? Most of the material is narrowing as you go up, right?
I'd be curious to know what the environmental impact of something like this would be like, because I know how much paper I throw out with screwed up printing attempts. Imagine how much sort of liquid plastic is going to be, like half finished busts and little knickknacks that people will be printing on their printer. I'd be curious to know how many things screw up on yours that have to be thrown out.
Oh, I guess we'll find out sometime in January. From my personal perspective, 2 thumbs up. Because it is information I'm very into, and I thought it was good. From a overall more objective, 1 thumb up.
Good point. Okay. I will say, as a documentary, it was like halfway there. I would give it 1 thumb. As a topic and as something that definitely piqued my curiosity, I thought, I really, really enjoyed it. And I was expecting a documentary about 3D printing. We really got a documentary about the world of startups.
Yeah.
Which was incredibly interesting to me. So, and again, I would say 2 thumbs up to Netflix for getting it made. That's the Geek and Dragon's opinion on Print the Legend, and so have a look and let us know what you think. Dragon.